everybody, and welcome back to Indie Film Cafe season. Is it 3 now? Jesus,
3.
Yeah, season 3. We're so excited. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody, and I've got my co-host here. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good. This is Paulie Presenza, otherwise known as the Moo Cow. How's it going, everybody?
And we also have our special guest today, Rolfe Kanefsky. How you doing, Rolfe?
Hi, good.
Yay.
Happy to be here.
So Rolfe, you I've always been fascinated because we've talked, and I think I've even interviewed you a few times, but you've done so much writing, period, not just directing, but writing as well for other people. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to direct the movies you write or just write in general?
I like directing. I mean, writing it's fine and I enjoy it, but it's, a script is, in my opinion, the blueprint to the movie, whereas a book is the book, but a script is a script. So it's not made until it's actually made into a film. So yeah, I mean, I visualize the movie while I'm writing it. So when I like to see it come to life on the big screen. So the writing is, that's at least more by yourself. I mean, assignments, you have to work with people and do certain things, but in a film, there's the collaboration and things come to life, and hopefully that's when the magic happens, and that's great. So it's nice seeing it through to the end there. Yeah.
Have you primarily directed your own scripts, or have you directed a lot of other folks' scripts?
I've mostly directed my own scripts, or I've rewritten scripts, but it's mostly original. I'm open to it. I just have never been given a script that's found the funding yet to get produced.
Yeah, I imagine it's a much different experience.
Yeah. I mean, I've read a few good scripts, but it's rare, and it's rare that I get offered material either, because I don't know if people, don't consider me or whatever it is, but being a writer director, I guess they assume I do my own material and stuff. So
yeah. Well, it's interesting that you brought that up because so you're saying that a lot of people try to maybe send you scripts and say, we love to have you direct it, but we just don't have the money and everything. And so that sucks. That's the way the indie world is. But would you if you saw a script and you really liked it, I mean, would you try to rewrite it yourself too to fit your vision, or would you just let it go?
Well, it depends on the script, the material. I mean, when you read a script, I mean, every director to a certain extent has a vision when you read it, and it's rare, if ever, that you read a perfect screenplay. And I mean, a made movie. So I've read a lot of screenplays that have been made from films that are great screenplays, but you don't get offered those too often. There was one script I was offered once that they just never had the funding for, which I did feel needed some revisions because it wasn't perfect, but it was really good. And it was a fascinating story. And I was shocked even to get offered it, because I was like, this could be a great movie. It was basically the making of the Spanish version of Dracula.
Oh yeah, that's really, really cool. I love that.
So it had an element of gods and monsters, and I mean, it was just a real. I mean, I did as I was reading the script, I was looking online to see if this was all true, and most of it was researched beautifully and really, really good. And I said, this is potentially Academy Award material, if you did this properly, because it is such a story that people don't know about, and it's a great story of Hollywood, of the whole the Mexican community and making films around the time, around one of the most famous horror films ever made. So it's an amazing story.
Especially since the Spanish one is really, really amazing, and if people haven't seen it, they really need to see it.
Yeah, it's to me, it's the better movie, except for Bela Lugosi.
Except for Bela Lugosi, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Bela Lugosi is what makes it, but everything else about the Spanish version is astonishing. And
they use the same sets, and from what I understand, they shot on the same things just at night later on.
Yes, that was it. They came in when the other crew went out, and the thing was, and the research is that the Spanish, the film they were watching the dailies, and they were watching what the American version was doing, and they wanted to top it. I mean, that was the whole thing, that they were really, whereas, because if you know the whole story of Dracula, you know, it was supposed to be Lon Chaney, and when he was sick with lung cancer, they had to go with Bela Lugosi. So, you know, he didn't want to make the movie, and and the actresses were British, and they felt this was like cheesy, stupid material. But the Spanish version really loved the material, and they were trying to make a great movie. So it's a fascinating story, and it was all told. I mean, I got the script offered over 10 years ago, and you know, that's when the lead actress who played the love interest in the movie was actually still alive. She lived to like 103.
Yeah, that's cool.
So the movie started with sort of her. It was almost like Titanic, going back from her, which I guess they were hoping if they even get her to play the, you know, to sort of reminisce, because she had a fascinating career as well. And do you know who her grandchildren were? The guys that directed American Pie.
Oh, nice.
Whoa, the Whites Brothers. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's them. It's so there was so much amazing interweaving stuff of things. I said, this is an incredible story, and they contacted me hoping that I would get the money to put it together, and it was like, I have no idea how to raise the money to do this, because this should be done with, you know, as a real movie with that,
like a Hollywood movie.
A Hollywood movie, absolutely. You know, I mean, we were throwing around names of who would play the roles, and you know, like Carl Lemney would be great for Danny DeVito, and things like that. It'd be fascinating. It was one of those. And I said, like, it's something that really Guillermo del Toro should do, because he's the perfect person. And you know, the thing was, well, if he could present the movie, if there was any chance in hell that he would let someone like me direct it, although I can't see why he would, you know, it'd be like, that's how you get this movie made properly, and then it becomes a movie everyone has seen. And
that's great. If you haven't seen the movie, I have a copy. It's great, and I've been dying for the Spanish Dracula to come out in Criterion. It really, really needs a Criterion version.
Was that the one that was on the DVD, right, of Dracula? Like, it was like a side, you know, one, right, or whatever.
It's like an extra.
Yes, they put it as an extra on the Dracula box set or whatever.
Yeah. But, so I think I saw it years ago, but and if I remember correctly, because I saw that at the video store too, that they used to have it. The guy looked a little like Bella, like enough where, you know, but he just wasn't Bella, you know.
I know, like, it's tough because Bella's so iconic.
It's so iconic, But then so many behind the scenes of the relationships and things that were going on with the Broadway show, and I mean, there's so much in the script. What, you know, like why they took out the rats from the American version that was in the Spanish version, but they replaced them. You know about that, right?
Yeah.
Because they just introduced the idea of popcorn in movie theaters, and they thought that nobody would eat popcorn with rats on the screen. So that's why they got rid of the rats. I mean, there's so many fascinating tidbits in the movie.
I know when I'm eating popcorn, I'm looking around for rats.
Right.
You know?
But the first change I made when I suggested, because I did think it still needed something, was the title of the script they had was just called The Spanish Version. And it was like, that's not a title. No. And I came up very quickly with, because based on like the first voiceover line of the movie, I said, no, the film needs to be called Children of the Night.
That's a pretty good title.
Music they make.
That when they were shooting the movie, they were literally the children of the night. I mean, that's the whole, that they were shooting the film at night on the stages, and that's the famous line. So of course, like Gods and Monsters, the Spanish version needs to be called that. So
yeah, I like that. That would have been perfect.
That's the title, yeah. So
Well, anyway. What they should do, honestly, in my opinion, is if they haven't, they should submit it to like those screenwriting contests and stuff, because like that's how if they get voted and get, but the script's got to get like perfect,
yes.
Then you put it to the screenwriting contest, then the screenwriting contest, if it gets voted up to the top or whatever, they'll get a manager who will then pitch it to like companies and stuff like that.
Right.
That's how that movie gets made.
I know what you mean, though. I mean, anybody who's ever been involved with horror, to be involved or the chance to get involved with something like that, and then to also recognize that this is probably something that somebody with more, behind them can really do it and do a better job, and to feel that and to know that it's like, oh God, I wish I could be involved in that. I know exactly where you're coming from. I've been dying to do a documentary on my favorite indie B horror movie director, Ray Dennis Steckler, for years and years and years and years. And it's just, it's just never going to happen by me. But I would love to see somebody who's got the capital and got the, the expertise to go off and do that. And that'd be just so fabulous.
Right.
Maybe somebody will, and then you'll be the person talking, be a person who, a historian.
One can only hope.
But yeah, that's an interesting thing, is like if Del Toro produced that and made it maybe or something, like it would be amazing, but unfortunately not able to. However, let's talk more about your films themselves. But we'll start out in the beginning, like so how did you, when you started making films and writing films, did you start on short films, or did you kind of go right into features?
Well, I got in pretty early to film. I've said many times, my father introduced me to the world of Abbott and Costello movies. They were growing up in New York. They were on every Sunday morning at 11:30 on Channel 11, and I fell in love with them. The first one I remember seeing when I was, I think, three and a half years old was the end of Abbott and Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So I guess right there, the comedy horror and that whole idea kind of appealed to me. And then obviously having something Frankenstein really sold me. So I started writing stories before I could even write, telling stories to babysitters of my own Abbott and Costello movies. And then I got a video camera finally when I was 13, and I started doing like home movies and little shorts with friends and things like that. And when I was 15, I did a 52-minute movie, and then in high school, I did a feature-length film on video, and then one that was my senior project as well, called Murder in Winter, which is actually on the bonus feature on the supplement of the Nothing Out There Blu-ray that Vinegar Syndrome did, which is kind of cool. But I did a few shorts in college. I went to Hampshire College, did a few Super 8 shorts, but I'd been writing screenplays that in screenplay formatted since I was 14. So I'd already written about 5 or 6 scripts. And my parents, who were very supportive, saw some of the shorts and stuff I had done, and they thought I was ready. And I had one script that I had written when I was 18 actually, called There's Nothing Out There. And that seemed to be the most doable one, since it was 7 people, a house in the woods, and an alien creature. And at that time, horror was a pretty good bet. So that's how we kind of decided to try to make There's Nothing Out There as my first feature film, which we did when I was 20.
Yeah. I when I remember, and I'm ashamed because, initially when Moody was saying, who we're going to have on as guests, and I was like, oh, okay. But, Party Bus from Hell and There's Nothing Out There is kind of what I immediately thought of, but there's a whole range of stuff in between those two films that you've been involved with that I had to refresh my memory about. For example, you were the guy that wrote Killer Eye. I loved Killer Eye. Killer Eye is one of my absolute favorite full moon movies of all time.
Oh,
and
right. Okay.
I had no idea that you were the writer for that. So thank you for that.
Well, I was one of the writers. That was a joint project. That was well, he uses a pseudonym on the film, but the director of the movie, it's probably no mystery who did it, but
David Dakota,
and Benjamin Carr, also not his real name, he did the original draft of the script.
Neil Marshall Stevens, I think is his real name.
Okay.
And basically Dakota really didn't want to make the movie, and he brought me on to rewrite the script and was hoping that he could convince Charlie Band to let me direct the film, because I actually thought it could be fun. I thought the script was so crazy. As I said, it was like, in my mind, Tremors meets Reanimator kind of attitude. And if you really had total control, I think it would have been even great if it was a musical and doing like Little Shop of Horrors. Nice. Because why not? It's sure. I never even tried that, because of course, but I did 2 drafts on the script, got it in better shape. But then when Charlie Band refused to not let Dakota direct the movie, It was a little too ambitious for Dakota for the time frame of how he shoots these movies. So he brought in Matthew Jason Walsh to pare down the script and tone it down to something that Dakota could do in 4 days, which is what the film was shot in. And so bits and pieces of my material exist in there, but it's a joint venture, you know.
It's still a really fun film, and that was back in my favorite full moon period with Jacqueline Lovell, who I had the biggest crush on forever.
Who I worked with a few times.
Oh yeah, she's marvelous.
I did direct her in a few movies. That one I didn't direct, but that one, yeah, she was. The best joke that was not used that I loved in the script was at the end of the movie, and they didn't do any of this. She's kind of into, Jacqueline Lovell's character is into like S&M. So she's like in sort of a dominatrix outfit, and has like whips, and the eye has the tendrils, and they're basically having this sort of fight between the two of them. And she like hits the eyeball at one point, and it's over her, and then a membrane falls off, lands on her, and then someone says, "Oh, I never knew the kid wore contacts." I was like,
that's cute.
I thought that would have been fun, giant contact lens, you know.
Nice.
So that's one of the gags I remember. That
there was a second one, wasn't there? You weren't involved in that?
There was a second one. I had nothing to do with the second one. I do know the writer of the second one is a friend of mine who used a pseudonym as well. But they were, I had nothing to do with that film. No.
Well, how come everybody else
did not come back to me for that one? What?
How come everybody else used a pseudonym and not you? Why weren't you like, yeah, I want to take my name? Like,
well, the thing was, I wasn't sure about it, especially because it was rewritten again. I was going to, but Dakota, before I saw the movie, said he was really happy with the film. He thought it turned out great, and I didn't want to insult him or by using a pseudonym. So since he was pleased with it, I decided I'll use my name. He didn't use his name. He used Richard Chasen, Dick Chasen, which I kept my name on it. I don't think that film has hurt my career, but most people don't know of it. It's one of those like there's two versions of the movie out there. There's one where they cut out like all of the sex and nudity, and there's like
right.
The movie's barely an hour, which is fine, except the highlight of the movie is some of the nudity and sexuality of the film. Absolutely. So I say the unrated version is the one to watch if you can watch it.
So yeah, that's cool. But you've done a few other movies too, as it turns out. I have watched one or two movies that were sort of on the boopalicious kind of scale, and one of them was one of the Emmanuel movies. I sort of have another thing for Allie Hayes, and it turns out you were involved in one of those too. And I was amazed. I was like, wow, this guy does everything.
Well, we're talking about a certain type of movie. We're not getting into all the family films and lifetime thrillers right now, or there's plenty of other, because we're focusing on it's fine, yes. But I worked with a French producer for many years named Alain Saritsky, who was the producer of the original Emmanuels, and he was involved in all of that. I met him at the American Film Market, and I worked with him on and off for like 16 years, doing a whole slew of we call them sort of sexy comedies or late night Cinemax comedies. And the Emmanuel franchise I got involved with, and the last official franchise that was made before Saritsky died. So I don't know if there'll ever be another official Emmanuel, at least not with the same producers, was this series called Emmanuel Through Time. And I wound up, even though I did use pseudonyms on that, because with the IMBD, if you have too many credits that are of late night material, and people again don't know the difference between soft erotic and hardcore, which I've never done any of, even though I've worked with adult actors, they tend to try to pigeonhole you, and I did not want to get stuck in that division, because that wasn't my intention ever. So I did use pseudonyms on them, but I did write and direct all of the entire series of Emmanuel Through Time, which was insane, because it was 7 movies shot simultaneously, not all in about 52 days, mostly nights. No one's ever done it. It's like Guinness Book of World Records on movies. I think no one's ever tried to do something like that. It was about a 670-page screenplay. Wow. One was a full-out musical, and one's a James Bond parody, one's a spoof on Twilight. My thing was to try to have fun with each genre and do something. Paranormal Activity, it was each one was a little off.
And I bring it up because I mean we are contemporaneous, so I remember the original with Sylvia Crystal and all that, and these were nothing like the original ones at all. It was so amazing and so refreshing to see the way that these were reset and everything. It was so much more than what it was back then. So I just thought it was a really interesting interesting retake on the whole material.
It was kind of crazy. I mean, it was it was a crazy series. It's like it was a once in a lifetime thing. I spent, because of post-production, to the amount of effects, because it was green screens. I mean, he wanted Avatar at the time, and it was like on no money. So I spent almost 2.5 years of my life on these movies that just killed me for the next year after that. But it was during the time when we were having the big recession, and the fact I was working at all was great. So I embraced it and tried to have as much fun as I could with them. And I think that comes across in the finished films. And Ali Hayes was great. She had just 6 months ago started doing adult films. I found her at a adult film convention because we were looking for the right Emmanuel, and I thought she could do it. So I discovered her there, and she was a trooper, because these are not easy films to do. And
sure,
especially for people, I guess, in the adult world that are used to coming in, working a couple hours, and then going home. This was grunt work and long days and hours, and so everyone who worked on this series, I give them all the props in the world, because it was hell.
Yeah, so Paul does a show called Sexploitation Sleazecast. So he's always looking like period for these kind of things anyway. So he watches these kind of movies.
Especially because the running theme all the way back from Ray Dennis Steckler and Ed Wood all the way up through a lot of major Hollywood directors and producers and writers is that, there are times when they've had to switch and go to the more adult oriented stuff, either to make money or for whatever reason it is. And, a lot of it gets buried. And I mean, I remember when I was interviewing Ray Dennis Steckler, he didn't even want to talk about it. So I kind of left it alone. But, I don't like to see it forgotten, because a lot of it is very, very, very different than the people who actually work in that industry all the time. A lot of these horror movie guys, they can't help themselves. They bring so many elements of what they know, which is suspense and horror and blood and gore and all that, into that. And it just makes it for a much more interesting film than your standard, XXX movie or X movie or softcore movie. And so I kind of like to make sure that those movies get a little spotlight and a little love.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah. No, we talked about at the time that they were doing all those like date movie and epic movie and all those bad Zucker brother parodies that weren't very funny, Meet the Spartans and stuff. I said they should do like not another erotic movie and like do a send up of the entire soft erotic. I actually wrote a script that was never made called Faking It, which was all about the making of the soft erotic and the socks and the patches and stuff that because most people think, a lot of people think when they're watching softcore, they're watching hardcore and they just edit out the actual sex. But no, these are all simulated, and the behind the scenes of the behind the scenes is sometimes so much more amusing than what the actual film is.
Sure.
I don't know if you ever caught the first 2 times I worked with Alon was on these 2 series based on novels, graphic novels by Milo Manara.
I know Milo Manara,
the big artist. Yes, he did the Click and Butterscotch, if you know those. And Saritsky produced those a slate of movies based on those ideas. Cool. That's how I first got involved. That was 1996, how I first got involved with him. And we did a series of 7 Click movies and 7 Butterscotch films. One was released as The Erotic Misadventures of an Invisible Man. And on that film, particularly, which was very funny, was that the one I direct, like making love, Invisible Man making love to women. So I said we need to do that rather than having bandaged up and doing the universal Invisible Man. So having to, come up with ways to make love to a woman, or hoses and pieces of glass and all this stuff. But I suggested that we hire a mime, professional mime, to work with the actors to do these scenes. And we found a female mime who did, and watching the rehearsal of a female mime trying to teach a woman how to realistically give a blowjob to an invisible man was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life.
Nice.
And I said, there's some great material here that should be mined for comedy gold.
Nice. And I don't know if you've ever seen The Apparition with Barbara Hershey. That's another, chick having sex with a.
Well, you mean the entity?
Yeah, the entity. Sorry, that's.
Yes, I know the entity very well, and if you ever saw The Black Room, I do a pretty good homage in the first 5 minutes to the entity with people don't even know how we did it, because we did it cheaper than anyone's ever done it, and it looks better than what Paul Verhoeven did with Hollow Man, or what even Stan Winston did with Barbara Hershey and the Entity. It looks pretty good.
Oh wow, that was with Lin Shaye, right?
Lin Shaye and Natasha Henstridge from Species.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Great. Yeah, fun little movie.
Yeah, I love that movie. I remember seeing it, and it's got a stellar cast. You always know how to pick like great actors for these films,
Thanks. Well, that was luckily SAG, so I had more leeway with finding people, because I've about a third of the movies I do have been SAG, and then probably 2/3 have been non-SAG, just because of budgetary things. But I've worked with some really great actors over the years, and
I noticed you worked with Brad Dourif. What was that like?
He was awesome. Yes, the hazing. Love to talk about the hazing. One of my higher profile, legitimate, horror films, horror comedies. Brad Dourif, we were looking for the professor, who's the evil professor in the movie. It's about a group of, the movie itself quickly was an homage to Hell Night meets Night of the Demons, with a lot of Evil Dead thrown in. Very 80s movie, but we made the film in the early 2000s. And Brad Dourif was always on the list, and we got him, which was awesome. And he was a collaborator. I said, more than just an actor. He really added a lot to the role and did a great job with it all, with Tiffany Shepis and Perry Shen from the Hatchet movies, and Brooke Burke, who would come off of the E! Channel with Wild On before Dancing with the Stars and all that stuff. Anyway, the thing with the hazing, though, is I just bought the rights back for the movie from the producer. So we just up-res the whole movie to 1080 to try to do a big special 20th anniversary Blu-ray release.
That's awesome.
So we have I found an early cut of the movie, like a cut no one's ever seen. And we're going to probably do new material, commentary tracks and stuff. And Tiffany Shepis is involved as well. And I think it could be great. So we're looking for a company now, the right, Blu-ray company to do a distribution on the movie, and then hopefully streaming sites and things like that, because I think it's a movie that's sort of been lost in time over the last 10 years. It's really, really hard to find, except for a few free streaming sites where the quality is bad. So now it looks like it's a brand new movie. It's really nice, because we shot the film on and
that's great. One of my favorites. I'm glad. And was Brad Dourif as intense as his reputation working with him?
He had fun with it. I mean, he's intense on screen. He always does. Well, in the movie too, he's got a good sense of humor. I mean, he's funny, and what you can see from his Chuckies and his. I mean, I thought the show was very funny. Some of his lines are great, but no, he had fun with the role. He added, he wanted to add more to the character of the professor and the research, and he knew a lot about Jung, and he tried to work that in about it, and deleted stuff, the elements and all that, because he came up with the whole thing. So we incorporated some of his stuff in there, and he's always a great villain, but I think he liked the fact that it has a villain with a sense of humor. He also, I remember, really liked that the film, he liked the weird sexual side of some of the stuff in it. He liked the mannequin sequence with the girl, and that sort of got his attention, which was also what Lin Shaye was attracted to in The Black Room, that it was a sort of a sexual demon, because now all these, there's 9,000 haunted house movies, and everybody has children, and they're always a lot of times evil kids, but when there's kids in the movie, you stay away from anything sexual. All the James Wan stuff, which is great. Nobody has sex or even kisses in these movies anymore. So I said, well, why can't you do an adult haunted house movie like they did back in the 80s with The Entity? And the Mephisto Waltz, which is a big inspiration on the Black Room, and and I even the Party Bus to Hell was inspired by Race with the Devil, and a little Satan School, so Satan's cheerleaders, So I've been sort of, I guess, trying to embrace some of the grindhouse 70s movies that is more fun, versus trying to, just do Tarantino.
Yeah.
And you also popped into a Fred Olin Ray movie. I had no idea, but you were in Bikini Drive-In as an actor. Tell me about that. That's amazing.
Well, Fred. Well, I met Fred when I moved out to California, and we were friendly for a while. I went over to his house, and we were hanging out. I wrote one thing for him that never was made, although he wound up doing kind of a kid's version of it. I guess it was later. They'd done the one before that. Centerfold,
okay.
Centerfold, yes. And I thought, because Roger Corman, because his connection there, that they should do The Man with the X-Ray Eyes. But how about doing with like a teenager and do a teen comedy with that? And he eventually did it, but I think he did it with a child, and it became more of a family film.
Oh yeah, no, I know that movie actually. I think Matthew Jason Walsh wrote it.
Probably, yeah. The kid with the X-ray eyes, I think, is what they turned it into.
The boy with the X-ray eyes.
The boy with the X-ray eyes.
Oh, right. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, we had developed it as a more of an adult, R-rated comedy, and then it turned into Without Me, another kind of comedy. But Fred was cool, and at the time when we were hanging out, he asked me if I wanted to come up and do a cameo in Bikini Drive-In, which I did. The funny thing is, in that scene with, I think it's me, Richard Gabai, and a horse walking by during the drive-in, we just sort of look at each other. It's just a reaction shot. Richard Gabai and I eventually wound up working together more as well, and he'd, with Fred, worked a lot, back in the days. And he was in a movie I did called Tomorrow by Midnight, my lost masterpiece, actually, that you've never seen, I'm sure, because you can't. And then over the years, he got involved in Lifetime movies, and I wound up writing for him some Lifetime stuff that he produced, and he got me into that whole world, which was great.
That's amazing. I love that. Like I've been in 4 Lifetime movies as an actor, and stuff like, what is it, Extra,
Yeah.
So I would have loved to have been in one that you wrote, that would have been awesome.
Thanks.
So have you directed any or just wrote them?
The last one, I just before the shutdown at the end of 2019, I wrote and directed a Pool Boy Nightmare.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Pool Boy Nightmare, which was the film that I did for the Asylum that was starting to produce Lifetime movies as well, and it turned out really well. Jessica Morris, who's done a ton of them, she stars in it, and it was the movie debut of a guy named Tanner Zagarino, which is an interesting story too, because his father, who was a B-movie actor for years, called Frank Zagarino. If anyone knows Project Shadow Chaser and some of those films, I had written a script that he actually made into a movie that he produced and starting with his wife, called Shattered Lies. And his kid was probably 5 or 6 years old at the time. And then years later, I'm auditioning for this movie, and I see Tanner Zagarino. I'm like, is he related? And sure enough, he's the father, and sure enough, he winds up getting the lead in the movie. So
nice.
Pretty funny. Generations later, so that one turned out well though. I enjoyed Pool Boy Nightmare. I also, I don't know, Sarah French has a role in that movie. If you know her, she's done a lot of genre stuff.
We love Sarah.
We know Sarah French.
Okay, Sarah's in the film too. She got in the movie, and it's a well done little film. It was shot in 11 days. Tight. The DP that I worked with the Vegas movies on Art of the Dead and Party Bus to Hell, Michael Sue did a great job, and it wound up doing pretty well. So We'll see. I'm developing some more. I'm trying to get another one off the ground that I want to direct too, but we're looking for the funding and trying to put it together.
That's great. So can you talk a little bit about your first film? There's something out
There's
there
nothing
and
out there.
shooting it. Nothing out there. At 20 years old, I mean, that's pretty
Oh yeah,
amazing.
sure. Yeah, I mean, again, that Blu-ray has everything you'd ever want to know about the film. But I I wrote the film when I was in high school. I had been watching, basically when I was 14 and I decided I really wanted to be a filmmaker. I started researching it and I saw that most first-time filmmakers, from Spielberg with Something Evil and Night Gallery and Duel, and Oliver Stone with The Hand and Seizure, and Francis Ford Coppola with Dementia 13, that people started with horror films. So I had always, horror films scared me. I had like terrible nightmares when I was a kid. Days of the Body Snatchers, Donald Sutherland, nightmares for weeks. But it was a love-hate thing. So I did love the Abbott and Costello movies and the monsters. So there was always an attraction. But at the same time, so once I decided, okay, if I'm going to be a filmmaker and I'm going to start with the horror genre, I want to know, the genre inside and out. So I was going to Fangoria conventions, renting every movie out on video. A few of them, especially Evil Dead, Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, absolutely had a major impact and influence on me. And I decided, okay, well, he was young when he did it. I think, I could do something like that. So I started writing There's Nothing Out There over spring break. And I think I'd also seen that famous Siskel and Ebert episode where they really hated all the slasher films. They were just how horrible to society they were and all that kind of stuff. So as an exercise, I said, I wonder how long it would actually take to write a low budget exploitation horror film. And I started writing the script, and I was about 5 pages into it when I had to decide if it's going to be a slasher film or a monster movie, creature feature. And I decided to go with the creature because I think there was more possibilities than just a guy with a knife. So I did that. But as I wrote it, I'd seen so many of these films, and so many of them are really bad that were just playing off the success of Halloween and those films, that I said, why hasn't anyone, in a horror movie ever seen a horror movie? Because it's like all teenagers, and teenagers are the audience that watch horror films. So why do they never see any and make the same mistakes that everyone that they yell at the screen make? So that's when I thought, what if we put a character in who's seen them all, who's basically kind of me, and could make fun of all the cliches and all the stupid things you do in a horror film? Because I didn't want to make fun of the genre. I wanted to make fun of the cliches and the laziness that people do in the genre, like the cat scare that jumps out of nowhere, that people just keep doing the same motifs and tropes.
And this is what, 80, 87, 88? This is before Scream.
Yeah, this was 87 when I wrote it. Yeah. And I thought, it would be fun. So that's how I wrote the script in 5 days. And it was fun. And then when we decided that one might be the right one to make in 89, I did a little polish on the script, but it was basically there, and it had all the elements that I wanted to hit. And we were able to put it together. And luckily my parents helped with, they mortgaged the house. We found a few private investors. Yeah.
Awesome.
And we shot the film on Super 16 in the summer of 89 when I was 20. And the film turned out pretty much exactly as I'd hoped it would. But the horror genre collapsed at that point. In like 1990, everything started bombing and the whole video boom went away. But, and I said, I was watching it happen because Tremors came out and bombed. They didn't know how to sell the movie. Nightbreed was sold as a slasher film, which was wrong. And suddenly the whole market was falling apart. So we had a movie that was, in my mind, it's more of a comedy horror film. It's definitely funnier than scary. There's nothing out there, but we still had, it's R-rated, or would have been R-rated if we bothered with a rating. There's nudity and there's violence and there's blood and there's killing, and some jumps maybe. But the comedy is what seemed to work in the favor of the movie because people were really liking the film. But because it was a comedy horror film, nobody knew how to sell the film. So we were getting interest, but they didn't know why people were laughing, because if it's a horror film, they shouldn't be laughing. And, years later, I've heard, many people tell the same story, that John Landis for 10 years got that same result on American Werewolf in London, the screenplay, because everyone says it's too funny to be scary. It's too scary to be funny. What is it? And I always was like, no, you can do it if you know how to balance that line. And I think,
absolutely,
the original Fright Night did it brilliantly. American Werewolf in London, of course, Tremors, and there's tons of Night of the Creeps, So I'm a fan of that genre. So we struggled with the movie for a couple of years, playing in film festivals, getting good reviews, getting the audiences to love it, but we couldn't find distributor. And then finally, we did a little forewarning of the film. It came out in early 1990 for a week in New York during a blizzard and Super Bowl Sunday, and then came out in California in April of the same year and started building up a midnight following. And then the LA riots happened, and there was a curfew, and there could be no more midnight showings. And that was the end of There's Nothing Out There. But we at least were able to sell it to HBO, Cinemax, and got some, play and word of mouth. And then 6 years later, at that point, 5 years later, a very talented writer named Kevin Williamson came along with Wes Craven and proved that what I was trying to do for no money and no time and no actors or professional actors in it could work. And then my film became this little kind of footnote of the bigger picture and the whole genre came back, which I was happy, because then I was able to go back and make more horror films, because I hadn't been able to make anything in the horror genres after There's Nothing Out There until the success of Scream, and then came The Hazing and Jacqueline Hyde and Nightmare Man and all that stuff.
That's great. And I was going to say, we are fairly contemporaneous. I think there's only a couple of years that separate us. So you have seen, just as I have, the evolution of horror movies back when it was straight up film, and then into the big boom of the video age, and then the collapse, and then into the DVD age, and then the collapse of that, now into the Blu-ray thing. And then you've noticed how movies tend to fall through the gaps every time that there's a new technological leap forward. There are these movies that never got picked up on VHS, or it never got picked up on DVD, or it never got picked up on Blu-ray. And that's another thing where I try to highlight on these shows, that all these other movies that are out there that people just don't know that exist, because they just never made it onto that next leap, technological leap forward.
Yeah, in that case, Nothing Out There was lucky, because every 10 years the film has been re-released, because it did find sort of a cult little following. I think thanks to Scream and people enjoying it, that we were able to do there was a Laserdisc when the film first came out through Image, and then the 10th anniversary when DVD came in, we did a nice special edition. That was the first time it really looked good, was on DVD. And then Troma did a special 20th anniversary release of the film with 2 discs. And then Vinegar Syndrome made a deal with Troma at the end of their deal to do a Blu-ray release. And then I worked with them and did tons of bells and whistles. I think it's the most packed Blu-ray they've ever had, Vinegar Syndrome, and we did for that. So, and the movie now does look fantastically well, because we did blow it up to 35 millimeter when we shot the film originally. So we did have an answer print, and it was on negative. Whereas unfortunately, some of the other films, even though I shot in film, we never finished on film. So you can only do so much unless you go back to the negative and 4K and spend a lot of money.
Great though. I mean, it sounds like you've hit every kind of release except Betamax.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. That movie has stood the test of time, and that, of course, 30 more than 30 years later, to people still talking about There's Nothing Out There and discovering it and enjoying it. And every time it comes out, people seem to enjoy it more, which is great. So that's nice. The only downside is that people know that film and then think I didn't do anything since. A lot of times people are like, what'd you do? Do you do anything after There's Nothing Out There? I'm like, yeah, I've been working for 35 years, making, movies, but, I know you don't know of them. And the problem is too, that people, the newer films, even with The Hazing, we're having this, is that, we're in a retro now of 80s and 90s movies, but we haven't quite hit the 2000 movies. So it's too new to be rediscovered, even though it's been out of print for 12 years. So I'm like trying to find companies that are interested, but it's like, I don't know why, because I think The Hazing is one of the best. If you like There's Nothing Out There, you would like The Hazing. So I'm hoping that, people are more willing to discover newer, films that could become cult movies as well as new material, because you make a movie today, people are just determined to think it's terrible. You're looking to hate it. Whereas in the old days, when a horror film came out, you wanted to like it. Now, because of the low budgetness of stuff, people are just, they'd rather just rewatch the older classics than give a new film a chance to see if it's any good. Or they watch it for 5 minutes and then turn it off, and, or fast forward through it, or, stream it. And, that's no way to, watch a movie. I always try not to do that. Whenever I watch a movie, I try to watch it from beginning to end. because you hope that people are going to do that for your film if they give it a chance, But when it's free on streaming, people are so ADD. It's like, no, it didn't grab me. So like, you make Psycho today, there's no Psycho. It's about a woman robbing her boss. Who cares? Turn it off,
Right. Right. Which, I mean, yeah, people don't want the build up anymore. They want it straight to the action from the very beginning, which really pissed me off when I was writing a script once. The note from a producer was, this isn't a horror film. This is a Lifetime movie, because there's no horror in the first 5 minutes of the script. And I was like, no, the horror was the girl gets hung, in the beginning. So I had to rewrite it to make it more like a throat slash or whatever, so that it's more horror like. And it drove me nuts, because I'm like, that just scared, like, it's just so different than what I want to do. I want to build up the suspense. I don't want it just to go right into the blood and gore.
Like saying, oh, The Shining is just a family drama with this little kid. Who cares about that?
That's it.
Right. Yeah. Anyway.
No, I know. It's I had that myself with Art of the Dead. Was an element of that, was that I'd done this movie, Party Bus to Hell, which is just insane. Everything in the kitchen sink. It's called Party Bus to Hell for a reason, based on that title, and Tara Reid being in the movie. You should have known what you're getting into. But Art of the Dead, which I didn't love the title, but that was much more of a character-driven piece. It was an homage to the Night Gallery series and Rod Serling and my favorites on that stuff. And I really developed that movie. And a lot of stuff happens throughout the movie, but one of the producers felt it was a Lifetime movie, that, the last 20 minutes are cool, but he was bored, so he didn't get behind the film. And I've had that time and time again where the producers don't quite understand or get what I was making. They want some kind of movie. I mean, I've always had that, like, we want something like The Exorcist. And I'm like, so you want to do a movie with a 13-year-old masturbating with a crucifix? No. We never do that. Of course you never do that. It's just like, just like the family films, you want E.T., right. But of course, anything that's not G-rated, Dove friendly, and E.T. has language in it and a few things, as does Goonies. They're like, what are you, crazy? Kids can't watch that today. It's like, everything has to be this. It's
yes.
I've worked under every genre, so
children now.
The hands tied behind your back kind of thing is just,
for whatever reason, children, teenagers, and preteens have all the money in the world, so everything revolves around pleasing them and selling to them, whether it's music, TV, or films. It's just ridiculous, because they don't have to pay bills. All they have is their allowance, so they get to spend on whatever they want. So let's go steal their money and make sure that they're able to come in and watch it.
Yeah. Right. So I have to ask you, because I really, really love, and we've talked about, I did it on Facebook. I mentioned that I watched the movie Redline, and you saw that comment, and it was so funny, because I didn't even realize you wrote it until I saw like the ending or whatever, and it had your name as writer, and I was like, oh my God, Rolfe wrote this movie. That's awesome. And we're actually going to be covering it for Indie Film Cafe with two of my friends, and I'm so excited about that, because I really, really, really dug the movie. But I have to ask, like, you had told me before, that was your first like paid writing gig, right?
In California, yes. I had done 2 films back in New York, and I made the move to California, and I got a manager, and I was struggling trying to get a job. As always, it took me about 3 years to started getting paid in California, but I did get this one assignment through my manager of Redline. They had sent me the script. The script was about 55 pages. They were going to start shooting it 2 weeks, and they wanted a third act. They had no third act, pretty much, and they needed a major revision in about a weekend. I had about 48 hours to work on the script, and I'm luckily have been pretty fast. So I started working on the script, and I did a lot of work. I put it together and came up with some good stuff, and they were happy with it. The director was also the cinematographer on the movie, and they got a pretty good list of names in the movie. There's a lot of cool actors in the film. I mean, it's Dom DeLuise and Corey Feldman and Michael Madsen and Jan Michael Vincent and Roxana Zoll from River's Edge. And Chad McQueen was the lead. And everyone was happy with the script except Chad McQueen didn't want to talk that much. He was sort of a little bit like his father, wanting to be more like the strong silent type. So we had some issues with like what he's willing to say or not say in the script. But it was an interesting film. It was some of it worked out really well. The Michael Madsen big scene, I was on the set for that day, and I was not happy with how that went because there was a lot of improvising that went on, and they took a really cool scene and totally turned it into something else. And I remember that, that I, as a writer, you couldn't do anything, but I did have to go. I did go up to Matt and I said, "Did you improvise this much on Reservoir Dogs?" And he's like, goes, "Well, on that one we had rehearsal time and we worked things out." I was like, okay. And then Corey Feldman was the one who came up to me. He goes, because he knew what they were doing. He said, when the actors improvise and we do it well, the writer gets all the credit.
It's true.
And I'm like thinking, yeah, and when he screws it up, he gets all the blame.
Right. Yeah, when the actor
he was too busy flirting with Julie Strain at the time, trying to get her into bed.
Oh man.
Are you saying Corey Feldman? Because I think, if I remember correctly, they had a fucking sex scene in that movie. They
did, yes, and that was the scene that they were going to use a double for Corey Feldman, but he was gracious enough to do the scene for himself.
Inches taller than him.
Yes, I know. No, they were going to use someone else because they were like, we don't really have the money to pay you this day. He goes, "Oh no, that's okay. I'll come in and do this day for free."
I would too. I mean, come on.
Yes.
Why not? But that's actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie because I'm just like watching it, going, "What the fuck?" But there's
the thing about that scene too is that there's an important plot point in that scene because I wrote that scene. That wasn't in the original script. Is that her underwear winds up on the mirror, and Chad McQueen, who's hiding in the car, takes it, and then later on he's able to reveal to Michael Madsen, who's the boyfriend of who she's having an affair with, that the panties, and he didn't want to say the word panties. He felt that was like a silly word, so it was like, well, what do you want to call them? And we finally went with panties, but it was a whole conversation.
Now, so I have to ask this about Michael Madsen. So, I mean, you were on the set with him and everything, and you told me something. You had like, I guess, a scene with Michael Madsen later for another movie. And
you're talking about the banana, yeah.
Yes, the banana. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so the scene yeah. So the red line thing is that in the movie he comes out halfway through the scene and they have this whole conversation. All the actors are there, and he decided that as they were shooting it, he came out of the kitchen eating a banana. And the banana wasn't in the script, but now all of a sudden, of course, for coverage, they had to buy, 24 bananas to match all the stuff with the banana. And they keep talking about the banana. And there's one take, and in the movie, they do a little bit of it, but they're talking all about this banana, just throwing out the script and talking about something that had nothing. And I'm sitting there going, how could I have left out the banana? I didn't know it was about a banana, the scene. And that's what sort of infuriated me. So cut to 15 years later, 20 years later, and I was brought on to do a major revision on a movie that's just been finished called Death Count. That's showing in I'm busy. That's showing in January 7th in Vegas in the premiere. Cool. And actually Michael Sue just won for best director of that movie. Anyway, Madsen, I had to write, they got Madsen in the movie and I had to write his role because it hadn't been in the original script. So I had him in the police station coming out of the wreck of the cafeteria area with a banana. And I had a line about the banana, and I think it's still in there somewhere, but that was my little revenge. This time, okay, Madsen's in the movie. This time I'm going to make sure I put in the banana, So that's the story.
That's interesting. That reminds me of in Godfather, where that beginning scene where Brando picks up the kitten and is playing with it. And that's not in the script, and nobody had that figured out at all. It just came out of nowhere, and he just picked it up and went with it, and everybody was like, "Where'd the cat come from?" Yeah.
Well, so yes, I mean, sometimes it can work. I mean, sometimes actors come up with something, and I get that. But if you destroy if nothing's going on much and you need, great. But if there's a script and there's important plot points, you could sort of damage it too. I mean, red line is not a masterpiece. So, you can play around with it. But the other story was that Jan Michael Vincent in that movie, the day before they started shooting, he was in a horrible car accident. He went through like the windshield of his car. And in the film, he's all like, stitched up, and he's got the hospital band on his wrist. And we threw in a dialogue about him, looking like Frankenstein. And there's everyone assumes that's makeup, that's part of the character, but no, that was all real. And that's what happened. And now cut to 20 years later, Michael Madsen wound up getting into a bad accident in his car just before they shot Death Count. And he looks like hell. And that's all real too. So there you go. That's the bookends of both movies.
Oh my goodness. So there you go. Well, you were saying something like you felt like it was a terrible like coincidence that happened, on two different movies, like I don't think you're any bad luck for anything, but like Michael Madsen might want to start, staying away from your projects, I guess.
Sure.
Well, but if I bump into him, I'm going to make sure I give him a banana and see what he says.
Yes, banana, right.
Oh my God.
He likes bananas, so he'll eat the banana. Yeah.
Was that literally why? Because he wanted to eat a banana on set?
I think so. Yeah. He just saw it sitting there and just walked in and started talking about the banana.
Oh my Jesus.
That's funny.
I love that. Like, I think that's hilarious. Like a little anecdote. I'm really sad because like, I had to find Redline on YouTube, right? And unfortunately, it's I think it is on DVD. It's just really like expensive.
It is. I have a DVD of it. Yeah, it was VHS and DVD when it came out. So I do. There is I don't know where you find the DVD now. It was Image. I think Image released the movie way back. But I do have a DVD of that movie. Yeah.
I think it might be out of print. So
there's some really impressive car stuff in that movie because they did all the car stunts and the chases, and they spent money on that. And there's some really nice stunts in that film.
Dude, okay. Did you write? I gotta answer this. Did you write the chase scene in the freaking graveyard?
No, because I had no idea that they were going to do that. I came up with a few little things in the beginning, but the chases they were going to handle that was the thing with the script, is that the script was so short because they didn't write out the car chases, and they assumed that the car chases were going to eat up 40 minutes of the movie. But it's like, you know how much money that's going to cost to do 40 minutes of car chases. So they realized the script was still short. But they just said there's going to be a car chase here. So I had no idea. They told me not to worry about that. They were going to handle that. And they did do a good job with that. So yeah. The only gag in the beginning of the movie when they're losing the guy in the alley, I wrote the bit where he backs up the car, hitting the dumpster, the garbage dumpster to block the alley so the car can't follow him. That was one I came up with because I knew they had to get away, and I thought that was kind of a cool idea. So that's the only thing I think I wrote with the car stuff.
I love how Joe Estevez is in it, but only for like literally 5 seconds of the movie. Like at the end.
Love Joe Estevez.
Yeah, he's in it like as the tow truck driver or something, or whatever. Like at the end, and he just has like one or two lines. But it's so cool. Like when you just see a cameo by him like that, you just know, okay, what, this movie just got better, because of that. So it was awesome. Have you directed him yet?
No, I never directed Joe Estevez. I know he was in a bunch of movies around that time, and I had a few friends who did work with him who had been doing a few of those low budget things. But I never really got in. At that point, I wasn't doing I was writing some, but I wasn't directing any of these low budget action stuff, which was cool. But I didn't until I started working for Zaritsky, and then it was all late night cable stuff. It was a different world. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Paul, do you have another question that you want to ask?
Well, I was going through your Internet Movie Database thing, and I noticed there was a movie on there that I guess it's come out recently. Maybe you could talk a little bit about it. Hopefully, Mirror Witch. Can you? What's that one about?
Okay. Well, no. That yes, I can say a little bit, but there's no movie yet. That's
okay.
No, Mirror Witch is a guy in Florida who I think he moved since contacted me. He was looking for a director on one of those Craigslist things, and it sounded like up my alley. He liked my stuff. He wanted to attach me as director. I read the script. I gave him some notes. They did a rewrite on the script, and they're still looking for funding, as far as I know. So I have no idea what's happening with that. It is kind of a Night of the Demons kind of movie if it gets made, and there's some fun stuff in it. But I have no idea where the money is at this point. So. Can't.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye out for it.
I always say you should wait until the movie gets made before you put the IMDb listing on. Most of the stuff on my IMDb has been produced. That's one of the few that is not. Yeah.
Okay. picked the wrong one there.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, no, I mean it does sound like something we love movies where, especially witch movies that, we're just always fascinated by, checking that stuff out. We watched one that we didn't like. Unfortunately, that was a witch movie. Paul knows all about that one.
Oh yeah.
But it's, you hear it and you go, oh my goodness, what is this going to be about? And so, like, I think that was what Paul was, wondering, and everything, because, it would be cool if it gets made.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, the thing that caught my attention was the Three Kings Seance bit, and that sounded quite fascinating. And I don't think I've seen that in a movie before.
No, that's part of the gimmick, and that's what the writer had put in that whole thing with the yeah. It's a very Night of the Demons-esque type of thing, using that ceremony and then contacting the loved one, and then demons show up, and they were doing things with the sort of the silhouette shadows, like in Ghost, coming after you. And there's some, I mean, I saw all the references I got when I was reading the script. I knew everything they were doing on the movie, which was fine. I gave some notes, and that's another one that, when I see the script, the final script, I might tweak some stuff, but I again, if you've seen the hazing and some of my stuff, I know how to make that kind of movie. So I said I could make this film with, and they agreed. So now they just have to find the money to make the film.
Yeah, let's hope so, because it sounds promising.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for everything you're doing. Is there anything that's coming up that you want to talk about, that you want to pimp out?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of different genres. I wrote a bunch of during COVID, a bunch of romantic comedies, which were fun, kind of hallmarky, but a little funnier, slapstickier. One of them turned out pretty well, that's being finished now, called I'm With Me. And it's sort of a Freaky Friday body swap movie with a couple who's about to get married. A week before their wedding, they wind up swapping bodies, doing a magical thing, and they have to figure out how to get back in their own bodies. And that was a pretty fun, challenging comedy to do that, and I enjoyed it. And an actress named Rose Reynolds, who is in Once Upon a Time, the TV show. I think she played Alice in Alice in Wonderland stuff. She's in it. She's great, and it's just a really good, fun movie. Right now, I'm trying to put together. I wrote a spec script this year that I'm very interested in, called Guilt by Innocence, and it's very different for me. It's a dramatic thriller, dark thriller, gets pretty violent, all female-driven movie, and I've been talking, and we're trying to set up this movie now. Barbara Crampton is really interested in the film.
Yay!
I was just talking to an actress and now director named Bria Grant.
Oh, I've heard of Bria. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. About directing the film, because I think a female director makes sense on this movie. So I'm trying to put the pieces together for that. There's a lot of people. Everyone who's read the script has been very interested in it. So it's an unusual story that I haven't seen done before. It just sort of came out of the blue and hit me, and that's one I'm pretty pleased with. Obviously, I'm hoping the hazing finds a good distribution and release. And if anyone's open, we'd love to talk to Arrow or some of these companies about it. I'm also getting the rights back to Nightmare Man this year.
Nice.
So that's another film, and There's Nothing Out There is in my possession right now, also, especially international. So those three films could be a great box set. We're thinking about.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
That collection. And then there's a horror anthology called The Macabre. That's a very first-time director from Vegas, Eric Mathis, who put together this kind of cool horror anthology. I haven't seen it finished yet, but I know he's put a lot of passion into it, and I worked on that. And then the one that we'll see how it turned out, but I wrote a script that I was going to direct, but because of COVID and other issues, I wound up stepping down as the director. But I wrote the script, a movie called Night of the Tommyknockers.
Oh,
and
nice.
It's a Western horror film, and I did a lot of cool research into it, dealing with Tommyknockers, which has nothing to do with the Stephen King Tommyknockers. He just liked the name, but this goes back to the actual mythology of the miners and what Tommyknockers are, dealing with the gold and all that stuff. So it's a really cool creature feature Western with Richard Grieco and Robert Lasardo. Yep. Some good actors, Jessica Morris. And I'm really curious to see how that turned out. Michael Sue wound up stepping in when I bowed out as the director. So that one I'm really interested in. I've seen the trailer online and it looks really good. So I'm hoping that, that turns out well. So we'll see. And currently I'm doing a rewrite right now on a script that's somebody's trying to make. It's a kind of a dark horror thriller dealing with child abuse, very serious subject matter. So I'm just putting that script together now, doing a major revision on that thing for this person, and we'll see what the year holds up. There's more things. I think the one that's supposed to happen is Images of Fear, which is kind of a found footage script that I wrote a while ago that I'm supposed to direct later this year. That's an interesting, dark horror film that could be kind of cool. And then I think it's a great idea. I have a package. We're trying to find the funding now, but I came up with a really cool Amityville idea.
Ooh.
Oh, nice.
Which, and the thing is, everyone's making Amityville movies now because the title is public domain, but I actually came up with a gimmick that connects it all to the actual story and to the house, and is something no one has done before. It's amazingly enough, but reinvents the whole thing at the same time. So if you're a fan of the series, it's not just in name only. It's actually a kind of cool way to continue and reinvent the story.
I love it when people make the effort. I really do.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Well, so, I know a lot of people actually collect all the Amityville, even the ones that aren't actually canon to the original franchise or whatever, which not many are. Like I think there's only been 4 or 5 movies that are actual canon to the house. Everything else has been Amityville Bigfoot, Amityville Shark, whatever.
Karen.
What?
There's Amityville Karen.
There's Amityville Karen. There's Amityville.
I know that was my hesitation, is that there's been so many that it's sort of almost diluted and destroyed that you expect it to be just garbage or just a joke on the Amityville based on these titles. So, it was like, is it worth it? And I think it is a good idea. So I'm hoping we can put together it's not a lot of money. It's still going to be a low budget thing, but I was thinking if we can do it properly, it could stand out as being like, oh, this is something that someone's making, like you said, making an effort, trying to do a legitimate film. Because everything I do, despite, what some of the titles are, and even in the late night erotic genre, I always try to put my twist and my spin on it and do something that you haven't seen 1,000 times. And even these no budget movies that were done for 5-6 day shoots, they were very ambitious. Like those Emmanuel movies were incredibly ambitious, and stuff and gags we did in them is insane. That no one should have wasted their time doing those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But I did, like a musical, because I wanted to do a musical or this or that it was just so much stuff that was, crazy.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you so much. This is awesome. It was great pleasure to chat with you and everything, and see that all the stuff that you're up to and everything. And I was really happy that when Paul was just telling me how excited he was because of all the stuff like Killer Eye and everything that you've done. So thank you.
Thanks. Oh yeah. Well, I just want to say that, again, like I said, there's nothing out there. Yes. But films like One in the Gun, which is a film noir thing, I'm very proud of, hard to find, very different. Tomorrow by Midnight, which maybe one day will sneak its way out there, which is about 4 kids that take a video store hostage for the evening. And, Carol Kane, Alexis Arquette, Jorge Garcia was in that one. Kane. It's a really strong, it's my favorite movie, and it's a great film that was just lost in the shuffle of time. Some of these, even some of the Lifetime thrillers and things like that, Watch Your Back with Annalyn McCord, who was fantastic in that one. I wrote that thing with, from Excision, and Annalyn, she's a great actress. She's attached to another project of mine that we've been trying to get off the ground for years. But yeah, then I do, because it's always been funny that in my career, you can, when the reviews come out, you can tell if people just mention the erotic stuff that they're gonna knock me as like this misogynistic whatever director, versus if they talk about The Hazing and Nightmare Man or There's Nothing Out There, they know.
Or Black Room.
Although Black Room was crucified when it came out because of the the incubus. It's a sexual demon. So guess what? An incubus is a bad guy, and what do? Just like vampires. Vampires, seduction is part of the horror.
Mhm.
But at the time, I guess people were just like, it was funny because women who saw the movie actually didn't hate the movie. A lot of them really liked the movie. It was fun. It was guys who I think they were worried that their wives or girlfriends were going to be upset if they liked it because of the content of the movie that they got, and they didn't. It was all campy anyway. The whole thing was as done as fun. Augie Duke was fantastic in that too, and Dominique Swang and Tiffany Shepis and all that stuff. So, the movies, but again, you just do what the best you can. A lot of times you're working with very limited money and time, but I always try to create a slick, professional quality to what I'm doing with.
I'm honestly kind of curious about the rom-com body swapping movies. I think that sounds fascinating, and I love the part where you said, they have to, they're getting married, so they have to get their bodies back. Well, what if one of them decides they don't want to swap back? What if they're much happier with the other body, and they're like, "Give me my body back"? I'm like, no, and they have to, go through this whole thing.
It's a very funny. I rewatched. I mean, I was a fan of that genre anyway, but I rewatched all of the Freaky Fridays and 18 Again and vice versa and all the ones in the 80s, and trying to come up with different things that they did. Yes, there's similarities, but their own things between them, because the difference is usually it's a father and son or a mother and daughter, but a husband and wife or almost couple, it's two very different dynamics between a man and a woman switching bodies, which they don't do too often. And there was a lot of material there that we really had fun with, plus with their professions. And even though it's not an issue in the movie, but it was eggshells walking on it. The producer, the only thing they gave me was they wanted a couple switching bodies, and it was a black man and a white woman. But this is, I know, a Hallmark kind of movie, so they didn't want anything to do with race. So again, you're doing like, well, if you're going to do a black man and a white woman, well, of course you're going to bring in, but it's like, no, you're not going to bring that in. So, I mean, in a way, not making an issue out of the issue is great because it's just accepted. But I really made it about their careers and how they grow as people, learning through each other and what they do, and they become better people, as well as finding all the comedy and elements in there. And it's a lot of fun. And I'll give away one little thing. There's a great bit, because usually in all these movies, when they wake up or whatever it happens, they scream and they see each other and they suddenly realize and they just scream. That's what they always do. So since I love old comedies, I don't know if you're a fan of the Marx Brothers.
Oh yeah.
But there's a famous bit they did in Duck Soup with the mirror, where they're dressed. There's two of them dressed like Groucho, and there's no mirror there, but they're doing like the mirror image to try to trick them, like they're both doing the same movements at the same time. So in this one, because they switch bodies, there's a mirror door in the bathroom that's open, and when they walk up to the mirror, since they're seeing themselves, they think they haven't changed. So we do the same thing, only they're looking at one another rather than themselves. And I did a gag on that, which I thought was very funny, very old-fashioned comedy, but they did it very well, and that was kind of cool. So it's nice when I can throw in those little tidbits to my roots of comedy of Abbott and Costello and Laurel and Hardy and the Marx Brothers and all that stuff, and Danny Kaye, and
That's
nice.
amazing. I love that. So thank you so much. So how can people reach you?
Easiest way usually is Facebook. I'm right there, Rolfe Kanefsky, same spelling on Facebook. I'm pretty available. People message me all the time, and I have a website that there's some information there. I'm on IMDb, of course, too. But yeah, rolfekanefsky.com. There is a site that shows, it hasn't been updated in a while because I'm not a computer person. But that's emails, and on IMDb you have my email contacts too. You can reach me. So that's the best way to do it. And
outstanding. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. This was great.
Thanks for having me. It's great to talk about the life and career, especially when we're all locked up still.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I love this.
I hope you at some point get a chance to listen to our Indie Film Cafe show. It's pretty interesting. There's we cover a lot of different films, and you never know.
We did
check it out.
Vittorio and I did There's Nothing Out There for 90s horror. I sent you the link.
Yes, I saw that. I did. I did listen to that. That was fun. Thank you guys for
yes. So yeah, that was awesome. So I'm literally looking forward to all the stuff that you're doing. I just love it. So
well, maybe once we know when we have a deal with the hazing, that would be a great one to talk about, because that is really a sort of lost, little movie that I think people that love Night of the Demons and have watched it so many times. Even Kevin Tenney, when I met him for the first time, he had seen the hazing, and he listened to the commentary track, which I do talk about Night of the Demons, and he told me he was so happy because there's so many movies that say they've been inspired by Night of the Demons and they're so terrible, and he cringes every time. He's like, "Oh no, don't tell me I inspired that." But this one, he said, you did it right. You got the feel of Night of the Demons, And then Tiffany wound up being in a small role in the remake of Night of the Demons that he produced.
That's awesome.
Which was funny.
Nice.
Which I think, Kevin, actually still even likes the hazing as much as his remake, So, that's kind of cool. So I'm hoping, we can generate some interest on that. And if we do, we could make a hazing 2, because I own the rights now. So we can do a sequel. Tiffany's up for it, definitely. And Perry Shen, I still contact him, they would be great to return. So that could be fun, Yeah. It's always try to fun to revisit a movie after 20 years, see if you can do a good sequel.
Right.
I hear that they're doing Mutilator now.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah.
With Buddy Cooper. So
people talk to me about Nothing Out There all the time, and I did write a script called "There's Still Nothing Out There. If you were afraid of nothing, it's back." The tagline. But we were never able to get the money for it or the funding. And that again, if you did it really cheap, I mean, maybe someone could put together $50,000, but I don't want to do that because it's just going to be bad. You can't. If you want to do a follow up to something that's good, you got to have a certain amount of money, I think, to do it properly. Versus just do it down and dirty. And I know there's plenty of people that know how to make these movies for $20,000-$30,000. I don't know how to do it. I just can't.
You're right. You have to have some good money behind it, some good financing. So I get it. Totally. Well, if you'll stick around, we'll chat with you after. But everybody else, thank you guys for checking this out and listening, and check out Rolfe's stuff. Everything that he's done. You can go on IMDb and check out everything. Like, there's a lot. So there you go. If you haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet. So thank you so much. And everybody, join us next month for a new episode. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.